Hello. See if my camera's on. Oh, my camera is. Oh, look at that. I forgot I had this. That's a little loud. Let me, I can't hear you. Are you muted? Or is it my, oh yeah, you are muted. Okay.
Yeah, no, I tried to, this is being recorded. Never mind.
Yeah. Whatever it was, I take it back. How about this? This one's a little more subtle.
Hello.
Hi. How's everyone doing?
Good, good, good. I have lipstick on my teeth, so that's fun. Excuse me.
Good that you found it now, not later.
I'm not wearing any. I guess I probably should have thought of that, but
This is the most done up I've been in God knows how long, and that's just very wrong shade of lipstick.
I just didn't even try. I had early meetings and nonstop meetings. So I'm like, well, I guess I won't be wearing makeup. It's good. It's cool. I
mean,
have this like
have
portable thing.
on.
I do. I always have like a thing of lip balm on my desk. So I just gloss it up.
Nice.
But I do have this, but I didn't use it. It's like a little portable, like, yeah.
You're one step further than me. I don't even got anything. I just
Yeah.
walk up, wash. This very important.
I did shower today. So that's, tick.
Brush my teeth, yeah. Brush my hair.
Well, how about randomly, I grabbed this sweatshirt today and it's my feminist shirt. I was like,
Oh,
there you go.
nice.
Like, what an
Perfect.
appropriate
Nice.
thing to wear for today.
I am thoroughly moisturized, so there is that.
Hey,
And
hey.
I went the
Hey,
extra
Khalil.
extra
Hey.
mile.
Hey.
Long time no see.
I know, right? I'm so glad you're on this, Yesenia. I was like, Yesenia, I love Yesenia.
Oh, stuff for you. I know it's
I was at I think you do what's your cyber jujitsu thing called? Were you doing something with Black Girls Hack at DEF CON? Did they have a table of some sort?
No, I wish.
Okay.
That's in the dream one day. I have my own. No, I was there. I was in women's cyber jitsu up in DC area.
They had a table at a Microsoft event, Women's Cyber Jitsu, I think.
Really?
Yeah, which was I'll find some information on this.
Yeah. Well, they did inspire my brand name, the Cyber
Okay.
Hooded Theta. So there could be similarities in that.
Got it. I walked in, I was like, jujitsu. Oh my God, is she around here somewhere? Dangerous one.
She's gonna attack. I'm not dangerous. I'm tired.
Very strong.
So tired. So I tell people, they're like, "Oh, you're the one that can beat me up." I'm like, "I'm tired."
I'm tired. I can't.
Oh, I'm trying.
I understand.
Yeah.
Hey, Jay, how you doing?
I'm good. How y'all doing?
Good.
Hanging in there.
All right.
Who am I seeing at events later this year out of this group? Who I mean, I know Catherine. I'll see.
You'll see me pretty soon. I'm kind of in denial about how quickly that is, actually, because it's coming up really quickly.
Yeah, I'm
not ready.
I have some notes for myself to work on.
Wait, Laura, will you be in Vienna? I can't remember. You will, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah.
the thing is like what Open Source Summit Vienna.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first I'll be at PGConf in Finos, which is at the same time in New York. But then, no, that's after Open Source Summit, and then All Things Open, KubeCon, Sauce Fusion.
Mm-hmm. All Things Open.
Yeah.
I might be at KubeCon this year. I haven't gone to a KubeCon yet.
KubeCon's on the list.
I will be at KubeCon this year for sure.
For sure. And we will have cool outfits on.
And we will have
a talk. It'll be fun.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Yeah, I have a little countdown thing on my, little app kind of whatever thing on my phone telling me how many days until I leave for Vienna, and it's starting to give me anxiety. It's like, oh God.
Yeah.
First time there?
No, first time in Vienna. Yeah.
Fun fact, it's my middle name. So,
Boom. LVL?
Yep.
Hi, Rick. We're just chit-chatting as folks come in.
All right, I'm kind of in a noisy coffee shop, but excited to learn and be here.
Yeah, no worries. Welcome.
So I was wondering, how do we want to run this? Is it just open questions? Are we going through the list, or are
So
there
I'm
abstracts to
gonna,
actually look at?
so I'll be moderating. I'll start off with generic, tell us about yourself, your involvement in open source, and then starting with the list, and then from the community, we can get questions at the end. If not, we have the list. Yeah. So we'll kick it off, and thank you everybody that is here, from our panelists and to our members. I'm excited to kick off another community office hour, this time focused on how to get started and submitting, your CFPs, your call for papers, call for proposals, call for, I don't know what else they use as that P, but I've seen an assortment of it. So just want to go around the room with the panelists and introduce yourself. Let me know your name, what you do, and then how you got started in open source and your involvement in OpenSSF. And I'm going to kick it off to Kahil.
I am Kahil White. I'm a technical program manager at OpenSSF at the Linux Foundation. So my involvement is I work day in, day out on OpenSSF, open source stuff, security as a program manager all the time. But actually, this is the third industry in which I've been involved in judging CFPs for the things. Like, I just have a weird background in CFPs and doing panel selections and things like that. So I've been part of panel selection committees for dozens of things, perhaps more. So it's wild. And I think I answered all the questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Catherine for next.
Sure. I am Catherine Druckman, and I am an open source evangelist at Intel. How did I get, my short open source origin story is that I needed a website. I needed to build a website. And so I looked for an open source solution, which was a phrase I learned somewhere. And the rest was history. And how did I get involved in the OpenSSF? I think that was 20 years ago, I suppose, when that origin story happened. So over those 20 years, I evolved as a developer, software engineer, and I increasingly became concerned with security. And that's how I ended up here. I ended up here because it's a personal interest of mine, and it's an interest of Intel's, thankfully. So here I am.
Lord.
And off to Lori, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So Lori LaRusso, I am the head of community at Percona. And my way into open source may be like a lot of other people's way. Like, I used to work for Oracle. I worked for Oracle user groups. And then I worked for another company that said, hey, we're a part of all these foundations, like, figure it out. What does that mean? And I was like, I have no idea what this means. And so we started an open source project with the company I was in, and I didn't understand how anybody could get anything done working in that manner. It was like everyone sat down at the table in the morning and nobody agreed. And by the time they left the table in the afternoon, they picked the tools they wanted to use, figured out the roadmap they wanted to go with. And I was absolutely hooked. I think developers make magic. So it was really fun to watch it unfold. And then again, to have to be sort of voluntold to work with foundations, being able to meet people like Catherine, Jay, Khalil, everyone that work in different organizations around the globe that are all like working towards the same end, whatever that end may be. OpenSSF is focused on security. At the time, the company I was with was relaunching a security project, so it made sense to become part of OpenSSF. And in that, I think it's just unlocked sort of this crazy, how do we not know what's going on? I can't wait to like help people like find out how things are going on. Sort of inspiration. And now that I'm at Percona, we're a database company, and so data hardening is definitely something that is a highly important to us. And so we're actually working on the Guac project, which is cool, and some other things. So yeah, it's kind of nice. It's full circle.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your incredible journey here to our call today. And welcome the new folks. If you do have questions in between, please feel free to put them in the chat. But let's switch the context to the topic of today, which is submitting a CFP. From my understanding, several of you have mentioned that you've worked for program committees, reviewing submissions. So let's say I'm a brand new person, looking to transition to cyber, looking to transition into open source. What conferences are out there in the open source, the cybersecurity, the diversity in tech, the academic? Like, what are the vast amount of conferences that I keep hearing? I'll let anybody jump in.
We're all pausing for a second, but there's a wide breadth of conferences available. I, of course, will plug, of course, the open source summits and the SOSS community days, but there are dozens of conferences out there that are very interesting, things ranging from like Grace Hopper to RSA. And like, there's just so much out there. I'm intimately familiar with the Linux Foundation stuff, so I'm going to hand it over to like someone else to answer the other companies.
I would actually want to plug. I think Lori has a good visibility into a lot of the bigger ones, but I would like to emphasize the smaller conferences, especially as a new speaker. There are a lot of regional events, B-sides, even DEF CON has regional, even meetups. Meetups are a great place to start. Meetups are always looking for speakers, always, usually. But yeah, I wouldn't want us to forget that, you know, sometimes staying closer to home is a really good place to start.
And I'm going to take it outside of conferences that are actually focused on security. I think that there are security tracks in a lot of developer conferences, and especially if you're just getting your foot started and want to kind of do intro talks, those are great. So I feel like I'm the queen of the intros. I love to give people just sort of a high level information and then give them resources on how to really dig deep. So I've spoken at All Things Open, I've spoken at KCDC. Like, you, to Catherine's point, like, look for the smaller conferences, but also just look for conferences that have a security track, specifically if they're looking for sort of like 101 high level content, because you're going to be the expert in the room and you're going to be able to help foster people's learning and get them more excited like you are about security in general.
Yeah. Another really great one that I would hate to not mention is the Southern California Linux Expo. That's a really great regional kind of community focused grassroots event. And also, I would also emphasize that don't just focus on, again, like Lori says, don't focus on security events, but focus on events that are geared toward your language. If you're a
what you're
Python
working on.
developer,
Yeah,
think about Python events. If you were like me, I come from the web applications world. You know, there are Drupal events, and all of those people need to hear about security. So.
and I think too, like, look at like bigger, like DevOps. They have tons of different regional DevOps events, right? Like, I've spoke at DevOps Morocco, but there's DevOps Belgium, DevOps Italy, like there's all those. And then when you think about language specifics, like if you live in Atlanta, DevNexus is a great conference if you're a Java developer. But even if you're not a Java developer, to Catherine's point, anywhere you can make it relate to the community that you're speaking in is the way to go. So, you know, what conferences are you currently going to? What conferences do you want to go to? And use that as your basis.
Amazing. So I heard a lot of different conferences and events that are out there. So how can somebody like myself that's new, doesn't have the network of connections to view all this, how can I find out about submission opportunities and these conferences?
That's a great question. There are a few sort of repos out there that actually list a long list of all of the CFPs, because a lot of people that do what I do in my day job and sort of developer relations, they get together and they compile these lists. I cannot tell you off the top of my head what the link to that is, but they exist and they're out there. And I look at it definitely from a developer advocacy or developer relations angle, and you'll find a lot of curated lists out there, and complete with CFP deadlines in most cases.
Which is great, because then you can like arrange your schedule and figure out when you're writing things.
I also think, like, if you don't know where to go, the OpenSSF Slack is really great. You just post a question. So using your network, even LinkedIn or you know, if you're on Twitter or whatever it's supposed to be called, you know, like, it's just really good sometimes just to throw the question out there, because there can be so many events that you're not aware of. Sessionize, I would highly recommend people get a Sessionize profile. Sessionize seems to be the tool people are using a lot for CFP submissions.
It's a good tool.
Which is great, because once you're in, and you can just keep drop down selecting talks that you've done. So I also think, like, if you're just getting started, creating a Sessionize account or any kind of account like that is important, because you can start to see the questions that you're going to be asked, right? Like, your bio, you have to have a headshot, like how is this going to be advantageous to the community, things like that. So just kind of knowing what kind of the scope of what you're looking to submit is going to be, it can help you really kind of formulate like how you come up with the title and the abstract.
We got 3 people that, oh, 2 to answer that. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
We had a question in the chat. Oh, yeah. That's good content. Okay, so we talked
I
about.
will also jump in with one more thing I should probably
Go
mention
ahead.
is events.linuxfoundation.org will list all of the LF events too. So you can see the overall like list of whatever else the LF has coming up event wise. And that's updated constantly. So there's just a lot on that because LF keeps very busy.
That one's a very busy calendar. So we talked about the different opportunities and the ways to find these opportunities. So I found one, I'm ready. Can we start talking about what are the types of formats that I can submit? I know we had mentioned Sessionizer is a good platform to come in and get familiarized, but like, what am I supposed to talk about? Like, how are my formats, all these talks?
Oftentimes you'll have for something a session, they'll ask you what your time commitment is going to be for this. Is this a 15-minute high level session? Is this a 30-minute panel type session? And once you get you should choose your session. You should submit based on that time slot, what you want to do kind of, and try and figure out what would work in that slot. Like Lori said earlier, you can get a lot into a 15-minute slot if it's a solo slot, but when submitting your session, you want to make sure you have it buttoned up and you have the copy how you want it, and you want to try and hook the review board, I feel like, with something. You want to try and make sure they see oh, this session's been submitted specifically for this conference. It might not be, but it might be tailored in such a way that it is. And I'm rambling a little, so I'm going to hand off to someone else.
I think the best way to start is like what is one tip that you've learned? Like, what is one thing that you are like, I can't believe you didn't know this? I will full on tell you, I am the worst PowerPoint presentation maker. And last year, that's right, 2023, someone showed me how to align boxes, if you have 2 images, and I thought, oh my God, that is amazing. That's crazy. That's a tip that I had no clue. And it's something that I share, right? So that's something that I find super valuable that I share. So when you think about what do you find valuable that that you want to share is a good start. And when you think about length of time, lightning talks are great, right? Because it's just like that. It's like my tip was 20 seconds long, right? But maybe you have something that you can dig into and it only takes 5 minutes. Maybe it only takes 10 minutes. And that's a great way to kind of start. And then you can build it out. Or you can go the opposite way and you have something that's so big, and then you can have somebody say, hey, look, this is what I want to talk about. And maybe they can help you piece it together. Maybe it's not just when you think writing a blog post, right? Maybe it's not just one, 1,500 word blog post. Maybe it's 3, 500 words. So that's kind of what I like to start with is what is something that I know that I think other people should know? And then, of course, from a company standpoint, what does my company want us to tell people that they think that they should know, right? Because you always got to keep the business aspect in the back of your mind as well.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to add. I mean, I think y'all covered it really well, but I would just say, always make sure to kind of take a step back and remind yourself, because this is where, and I think we'll probably go into a little bit of imposter syndrome later, but this is where I sometimes struggle with, I feel like I need to be the absolute top expert in whatever it is before I can talk about it. And that is not true. And you have to kind of drill that into your brain that anything that you know and can share is valuable. It just is.
I love that. Got me goosebumps. So you just never know who it reaches or who it touches, right? And who the audience is. So I like that we're shifting to this. What are some tips for first-time speakers that, they want to do it, but they're scared of getting into a big audience. They just kind of want to feel it and drive into, maybe they want to take baby steps. What is recommendation tips for first-timers?
I think using your company, doing brown bag lunch and learns, right? I mean, you can't rehearse enough. That is one thing that my first talk was at CDCon in Dublin a couple years ago, and it was only supposed to be a 15-minute talk. and then somebody dropped out, and then it had to be a half an hour. You can imagine what it's like to have 15 minutes solid, and then you have to somehow stretch to 30. I mean, I was panicking. And I think the way that I got through was I presented to myself multiple times, and then I presented to colleagues that I trusted because I was so nervous. They helped add some additional facts and figures and tips to help me extend my content. And then I rehearsed it again to the same people. And like, I think you cannot rehearse enough. Like, you really need to be comfortable with your presentation and know that like your slides and your speaker's notes are just there to supplement the knowledge that you have in your brain. If you're going to read your slides, there's no point in doing a presentation. Do you know what I mean? Like, you really need to use that as supplemental to like what's in here.
That's my biggest tip, I think, is look for opportunities to speak virtually, whatever that means, right? That could be internal, external. It could be also start small with meetups, but virtually is can be a lot easier, because if you're not used to it, just getting over the slight anxiety of standing up in front of a crowd of people, if you take that off the table, it's a little bit easier. And then once you get more and more comfortable with a topic or with delivering the slides, that you have in mind, then you can take even the same talk or other talks and then think about giving them in front of a human live audience.
Yeah, I have nothing really to add for those because they're both like fantastic ways of handling that. And rehearse. I come from a performance something background, and rehearsal is very important in terms of like just being comfortable with the material, because if you've rehearsed it and you're comfortable with it, people can tell on stage you are more relaxed yourself, you're not as stressed, you know your stuff, and like it makes it much more enjoyable for you, the speaker, as well.
Ooh, I also want to say have a backup, right? Like, how many times have people quote prayed to the demo gods and things have not gone the way that they want it, right?
Record your screen.
Yeah, record your screen for demos. Don't do anything online.
Like, do not rely on an internet connection. Oh, okay.
If your PowerPoint can be offline, like if it can be a PowerPoint actually, or just something offline that does not require internet access, I highly recommend that, just in case, always.
Yeah.
Also, I also want to also just add, also embrace the fear. Like, there's the acknowledging it and just kind of embrace it. It's totally fine. Like I give talks. I give talks fairly frequently these days, I guess. I don't know. I still get super nervous, and that's just part of it. It's like, that's fine. It's not just you, it's all of us. So just embrace it, and you know, it's part of the fun.
There's so many moments, at least in mine, where I'm like about to get on the stage and I'm like a nervous wreck. And I'm like, oh God, I gotta do this. And then it's over and I'm like, okay, I did it.
I don't know how you do that, like at our shows and other shows, but like when I was working in a different industry, I would be backstage before a panel and I would do like 10 push-ups 15 minutes before the panel just to like get that nervous energy out. Just like, okay, cool. All right. A little bit of that, a little calm down situationally.
Yeah, I remember for one of the OpenSSF like conferences, I have a playlist that I use for my competitions and like my workouts that kind of get me. I just started like jamming and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna get in this mood and do this.
I've got some like morning playlists as well for those like events, like heading to on-site. All right, let's go. Getting in the mood. Let's go. I'm ready.
Jam it out.
I also think too, knowing like that the audience are humans just like you are.
Yeah.
I tend to, when I get nervous, I tend to speak fast, but before my talks, I like to warn people that like my talks always seem to be at 8:30 in the morning, and I don't know why I'm so lucky, but I'm a morning person, so it works for me. I always apologize to the audience for them having to get up to see me talk. And then I like to use humor, because I like self-deprecating humor to kind of make me feel better as we go along. I think it kind of gets them on your side. So there have been several times where things have not gone right for me during a talk, but I didn't freak out because everyone was like feeling the same pain with me, and we were like, we're going to make it through. So, we're all there just to learn, and accidents happen, and it's okay. You just have to like roll through, just keep going.
Did we talk about the buddy
some other
system?
public speaking training we've done in the past, and like some of the things like the instructor had that was like, remember the power of pause. Like you can talk and you can add a pause, and that's very effective for things. Like if I'm just talking about something, like, and think about that for a while. Silence or situation, people think about it. Other good ways of I'm thinking about engagement now for panels, but like if you ask people to raise their hands and things, you actually get people are more inclined and like they are paying more attention if you ever have some sort of audience interaction in any way whatsoever. If you're like, hey, how many people have done XYZ thing before? And like that gets the audience more built in, and that helps.
Catherine,
We
you
didn't
wanna
talk about the buddy system.
Oh, yeah. The advice when Jay mentioned, sorry, somebody who mentioned panels and sorry, my brain. See, it happens to all of us when we're but being on a panel or getting, a buddy, like a pair presentation. If you are new to this, a panel or a partner in your presentation can be a really good way to make things a little bit easier. It shares the load not just of preparing for the presentation, it shares the load of the stage fright as well. So.
Exactly.
So I have a great example of this. Jay White is on the call, and Jay and I co-presented at the LF Summit last year.
Yeah.
And
yes,
it was awesome. He was on the floor, I was on the stage. We built the presentation together. And for me, I was like super nervous to talk with Jay because I mean he's Jay, he's a part of like every organization out there. He's Microsoft, like who am I at that time? I didn't have a job. I was just like hanging out in the community, and it made me feel so good to know that he trusted me to co-present with me and that we could do it together. And it was just, we had this really good rapport on stage and it was so much fun. Like I have to, I think it was like the funnest presentation that I've given, and I only did half, and that was awesome.
Panel, well, partnering with someone, especially for junior presenters, like, people who want to get their feet wet, right? People who are saying, man, I want to give a talk, I just don't know what to give. When you partner with someone who's a bit more seasoned, man, that makes all the difference. And not only does it make a difference in how, and your level of confidence, it makes a difference in let's call them the more experienced speaker. It gives them confidence as well in their ability. There are three ways of learning, right? You learn it, you learn, you apply it, right, and then you teach it, right? So and unless you cover all three of those pillars, wisdom doesn't begin to take hold. So when it comes to an experienced speaker, the give back on that is to bring up a junior speaker, is to put a junior speaker out front, is to sit there and put your name behind them and put that ability to engage an audience and all that stuff behind them. So it just works out on both ends. There's a give and take to that. That can't be stated enough.
I also think if done well, and this is maybe a little bit more of the hard part, but if done well, a multiple person presentation can be so much more engaging because it feels so much less like somebody talking at you, or even the most fun and engaging speakers can tend to feel a little lectury, right? But if you have a banter and a conversation, it becomes more, I almost feel like you can pull the audience in a little bit more to your conversation. It's that hallway track appeal where people are in on the cool kid conversation, and that I think just really works well. So that's just another layer of why that works.
And I'll also jump in as well from like a CFP committee side of things too. Like when a CFP committee sees a new speaker, like, okay, this person's probably good, but we don't know about this person. But if the CFP committee sees a new speaker and an experienced speaker or someone else they already know at the same time, that is something where they're like, oh wait, this person knows their stuff. This person probably knows their stuff. This is like, it makes a difference, I think, in CFP committees oftentimes too.
Yeah.
It's like the apprenticeship. Like, this person comes with me. This is my mini me. This is such great tips. There's this one actually took me a minute. I think it was just last week when I finally figured out what this meant. And I'm sure it's on a lot of like submission and talk types. Birds of a feather, right? For me, I think of the mighty ducks. We flock together. Can someone go ahead and talk about what that is, and then benefits for somebody new coming in, maybe like how they would want to submit that, a birds of a feather?
I think that means something different, actually, a little bit depending on the event. So that is a further layer of complication. But
Right.
I think usually, to me, it means it's informal. It's something where it's just people getting together and hashing out an idea. It's really more of a two-way communication rather than a one-way presentation. So it's gathering people who are like-minded, working on a similar problem, for example, and it becomes, a small room, maybe in a separate track, where people are really just having almost like a roundtable discussion with the attendees. But it can be a little bit different depending on the event.
I think of it as like a hallway track, but a session, right? Because when you're in the hall and you're talking to people and you're like, oh, did you pick up that one point that so-and-so said? Like, and then you really want to dive into it. Like submitting a birds of the feather is exactly that. This is the one point that you're like, oh my gosh, like we should totally kind of get into this. Like, I really want to see what that's like. And to Catherine's point, you all get in a room, the pressure is off because you don't need to have slides. You don't need to have anything really prepared. It'd be nice if you kind of knew what you wanted to talk about. So it's sort of like, I don't know if any of you have been to an unconference where you suggest a topic while you're there, people vote on it and then you get in the room and the only purpose of that room is to talk about what you want to talk about. There's no slides, there's no, the preparation is in your brain. And I think birds of a feathers and unconferences are great because it helps you identify what you maybe can give a talk about. Like it helps you like pick certain topics or ideas, or maybe there's something that somebody said that you're like, I know about that. I can take that. I can put that into a talk. Or if you're like, I have no idea what that is, let me research it. And then I can like share that and put that into a talk. So I think birds of a feathers are great so don't ignore them when you look at your conference schedule and think like, oh, I don't know what this is. Like specifically if it's something that's attractive to you and you think, wow, I kind of want to know more, but I feel awkward because it's not a structured session. No, that's what makes it so great is that it's not structured.
Yeah, they're fantastic, like loosely structured, like loosely formalized in a room, people talking on a topic. But like I've made great friends actually of birds of feather topics, or found great other industry people who I would not expect to be like follow and pay attention to from those kind of things, because they will like you room full of very smart people and everyone's talking and like going back and forth, and you might learn something. You may have submitted a birds of feather talk on one thing, and like you go into that talk and you learn something else about your one thing, yes, but something you don't even know about inside your same space, and that's always great. I'm a fan of them, is what I'm saying.
That seems like a good pathway for new folks to come in, especially if they don't really have an idea of a topic,
Exactly.
maybe just something they want to explore. That's great. I never really knew about it. So let's move into more of the application process. So what are things as community reviewers that you look for in a good abstract, the title of their talks? How are things, what resources and tips you would recommend for somebody maybe writing their first CFP?
Which one
I
wants
have
to go first?
Who wants to go first? I have
They're all
many,
gonna
many
fight.
thoughts.
There's this idea of buzzword bingo. And, so I think S-bombs were the buzzword a couple years ago. And, like it's sort of trying to take what's trending and then throwing it into your talk, but it has to be relevant. So I think, as a abstract reviewer, you are kind of looking for like the top trends. I think when you look at the content in your submission form, like the ideas that the conference committee is giving you, what you want the talk to be about, that's very important because that helps shape like what you're actually going to write about. But buzzwords work if done right, but like don't overdo them. I think throwing in a bunch of buzzwords in ChatGPT and say write an abstract for me, I mean, that's not the way I would go. I would maybe write your abstract and then give it to someone else and say, hey, how can I make this catchier? What do you think is going to get someone's attention? And maybe they throw in S-bombs because you missed it. Or maybe they're like, hey, like this is, maybe you don't know what's going on in the European Cyber Resiliency Act, right? But like what you're talking about, that like it completely makes sense to put that in. And maybe that is like the buzz that kind of gets somebody's attention, like, oh, okay, cool, this is how it relates to what's going on in the world in tech right now.
Yeah, I will say present your idea clearly, but also since you mentioned ChatGPT, I'm going to go into
Yeah,
a
we
little
gotta
bit.
go there,
Catherine and I
Zoe.
have TED Talks on this one too, and like at this point, panel reviewers, people who review panels often, CFPs often, they can sense the patterns of ChatGPT. And like you can see, you're like, this is something seems off. And that's not to discount anyone who submits via ChatGPT, but it doesn't inspire confidence oftentimes if it seems like this was entirely generated by ChatGPT for their abstract submission, and people get a little bit worried. Like, I understand it's English second language, so like that's also a hard one to try and parse through as well with ChatGPT. But I would not rely on generative AI to produce your panel abstract. You could use it for a start, perhaps, is what I would do if you're going to go that direction. But that should not be the final pass for your panel abstract, because at this point it feels like you're not trying, and oftentimes ChatGPT does not do a good job of actually summarizing like what you're trying to get out of this talk.
Yeah,
is how I feel.
It tends to be kind of vague. You can tell. Again, we get like he says, we can tell. It's just when you've read several hundred CFP proposals over a 1 month period, immediately you can tell there are certain words, there are certain patterns, but the overall tendency is to make them kind of vague and kind of generic. And it's not serving you. There are great ways to use generative AI applications in this process. One of them, I think, is to distill large amounts of information, summarize several documents, and pull out the key points, and then you can use that maybe to write your abstract. I think that's a different approach, but definitely not the finished product. But and elaborating on the concern about being kind of generic, I think that one of the things that I look for is I really want you to tell me what you're going to talk about, and then you'd be surprised at how often that doesn't happen. People will state a problem, but they won't say how they're going to address it. I really want to know from just reading the abstract. I want to get an idea of what I will see if I go to your talk, and I think that's really key and is surprisingly frequently overlooked.
So I used to teach public speaking when I was in grad school, and so you have the 3 T's, like tell them what you're tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And I think like your abstract needs to be just like that. You need to have an intro, the meat, and a summary, right? So, and then when we think about the other layers, like it's what is this good for the ecosystem? That's where you can kind of expand back a little bit and give it a broader view of like how your talk fits into overall what's going on. But to Catherine's point, like you really need to put things into, even if it's a lightning talk. I just rewrote an abstract for a colleague because he didn't follow the 3 T's. It was just like, I'm going to tell you about this. It was like a 1-line, 2-line abstract. I'm like, no, let's set the stage. It ended up only being 3 sentences, but those 3 sentences were precise. They were to the point. You looked at it and you're like, okay, this can totally be done in the 5 minutes time slot. That's the other thing, right? Like, does your abstract fit the time slot you're applying for? Like, so if your abstract's like 4 paragraphs long and it's for a 15-minute lightning talk, are you really going to be able to cover everything in that? And when we think about like English as a second language and trying to rely on like a ChatGPT to help you feel more comfortable, rely on your network of friends, rely on the colleagues that you are comfortable with. That's what they're there for. We run office hours with OpenSSF where like what we want to do is help you review your abstracts. Like we have the experience, we've done it so many times, and we're not guaranteeing that you're going to get into a conference. And you have to really also not be super passionate in terms of like not wanting to change what you wrote. Like you have to be open for criticism, open for change. And again, we're not guaranteeing your talk is going to get accepted, but at least you're going to have some it's weird to say experts, but you're going to have some people that have done this enough times to help you really kind of reshape what you're doing. I've done it with Catherine. She's done it with me. It's like, it's just
very helpful.
It's super helpful to get that outsider viewpoint, especially if it's someone that has no idea what you're talking about. They're going to be a reviewer because they're going to need to know, right? Because they're lost initially. So that's kind of how I work the room.
Yeah, even internally when I'm working like on working copy or something, sometimes I'll send something to a coworker or a friend or an ally and be like, hey, are these words even English at this point? Like, I understand this, but like, as a person, does this make sense to you?
I once wrote of an and I'm an English speaker, but I could not remember how to spell of. And so I found it out, and UV, I was like, here we go, blah, blah, UV. And I sent it to someone and they're like, what is this?
Lord, Lord, what is this?
I was like, of. They're like, OF. Oh,
Like, yeah, you
my
know,
bad.
you know.
That's when it's been a long day.
It's a 2-letter word. I picked the wrong 2 letters.
You're like, I can figure this out. Look at a keyboard.
Yeah, close. This is good. Laura, can we talk more on that community office hour that you were talking about on the review? How often do you meet? What times? Like, where can they find this information?
So actually, Catherine would be best.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, where can you find it is on the OpenSSF calendar. It's on the public calendar. It's always on a Thursday. And the next one, it might actually be next week. I am not entirely sure about that, but it might be next week.
Do you know what the meeting's called?
It is
so I have it for
called DevRel Office Hours or DevRel Community Office Hours. It will definitely say DevRel in the title, though.
Next
But yeah,
one is Thursday the 5th, it looks like.
Ah, okay. Well, I will definitely be there. Some other people might be there as well. And all of those people are always very happy to give any feedback on talks, on honestly any kind of content. Anything you want to talk about, bring it to us and we will hang out and we will go over it.
Seems like a call to action to the group today if you want to talk something ready by that for review. Let's say, all right, so they want to prepare for that DevRel call, right? What are the typical timelines to get through the application? What other questions may the application process require them to answer that you've seen that have either thrown people off or they're just like, I was like, I don't know how to answer this.
It's the ecosystem question, which is a good one too.
That one,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes comes up and it's not your abstract. It's another section, that same application asking like, how does this help the world? Like the world of this, how does it benefit the ecosystem? And that's
no.
yeah,
Pressure,
that's a good chance.
pressure.
Like your abstract can be really good, but like you can that's another chance to get information in, because we've selected panels based on that before too.
Yeah,
Been like, oh, wait a
true.
second, like in this section over here, holy crap, they know their stuff.
Yes. Some people do that very well. I will say that I would say most people actually don't. I'm not,
Yes.
I think I might even put myself in. I think that one's the tough one. You suddenly have an existential crisis. You're like, I don't know.
Yeah,
am I useful to anyone? I don't know. But
have I ever helped anyone?
But exactly, but it is a really great opportunity to add information that doesn't necessarily flow in your abstract or something like that, right? And you can put it in there and say like, here's really the reason this needs to happen. Like that's your opportunity to sell the reviewers on your panel or your presentation, and I think that's incredibly helpful. I will say though, it's not. There are some even trickier ones, and the Grace Hopper celebration. Has anybody gone through that form to submit
This last year
a talk was overwhelmingly complicated, and it really did throw me off. I was not prepared to answer all of that. Fortunately, the talk that I submitted was a talk I had given before, so it made it a lot easier, but they want a lot of information. And so, and that's just going to vary. And I would say it's really going to be tough to be prepared for that, which is why you always want, don't try not to submit at the very last minute, right? You want at least a week before the deadline to start the submission process, so that you can familiarize yourself with the form, because sometimes there will be a field that will be a surprise to you because maybe it's on the next page of the submission form.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of events will give you all of this in advance and say, here's what we're going to ask you, but there can be surprises. So just try as best you can not to put it off too much.
I also think the sometimes they have notes to reviewers, which is a good section, right?
Yeah.
So that's where you can say this can be a full session, like a 45-minute talk, or I can knock it down to a lightning talk if you need, right? It's where you can sort of state your case for it, like if you're not sure what track your talk fits into, like maybe it fits into two different tracks, you submit it in one track, and in that notes to review, you could say, I was looking at this track, but also this track, so it just kind of lets them know that you're really involved in the process, and also like to Catherine's point, you got a little stuck and you weren't sure. And I think that happens sometimes where you don't know where your talk should fit, because it could fit in a bunch, right? Like, so, you know, those extra fields are there for you. And yes, as reviewers, we do look at them specifically when there are a lot of highly rated talks, and you're trying to pick and choose. You go to those other fields just to get more information, because maybe that'll help edge somebody up higher than someone else.
Those can be
All
the
that
difference.
stuff is, yeah, it's all worthy.
But they are the hard ones to fill out too, because like oftentimes you're like, okay, I've got this this abstract buttoned up. Here we go. Oh wait, there's more questions. Okay, I do not have that in my document right now. Okay.
I almost always. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say one thing I would add is for applications that you're not sure of the length, like this last year's Grace Hopper, which is a continuous, like you never knew when it was gonna end. You know what I mean? I recommend getting a like Google Docs or like a document where you start adding your information in there. One thing that happened to me was I think it was the Grace Hopper. They requested a video of me presenting it. And I ended up like having to go create the video. And when I came back, my session timed out. So everything that I added to that disappeared. So, yeah, that was a feeling. So highly recommend that when you're going through these applications, you're also passing that over. And then Catherine, you were gonna.
Oh, I was going to say that to what Lori said, I almost always give options because I hope it doesn't make me come across as indecisive, but there are all, you know, especially at these events that have a lot of tracks, it is not uncommon for your talk to really actually fit well under multiple tracks. So I always like to, you know, give options, it makes you appear flexible and be flexible, right?
And that's useful for the presenters of all the people running the conference as well, because like Catherine and I just did the process of going through SOSS Fusion CFPs, of which there are over 200, like, which is so much data to sort through. But like when you have someone's like, oh, it can be shorter or longer. We only have so many slots. So like, oh wait, this can be 15 minutes instead of half an hour. We really like this talk. Let's bring that one on in.
Yeah, it's really helpful. The other thing, so the thing that you mentioned about asking for video, this is an interesting thread, and I don't know if you were going to go there a little bit later, but
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll pause then, or I'll hold my answer.
I'll call on you first. So I've seen applications where the video is optional. What are your thoughts about requesting a short video where they kind of pitch their talk in the application? Do or do not?
I feel a lot of ways about this. I think first, if you have one, and especially if you have a talk that you feel pretty confident about, absolutely you should add it. Are people going to necessarily even look at it? Hopefully, maybe not always, not if there's not enough time, but if they're asking for it, I would say definitely try to submit it. And I would say about that, don't be so hard on yourself, because I would say any video of you speaking is better than no video, right? It could be a quick YouTube short that you've produced for some reason, right? A tutorial, anything, even if it's not necessarily related to the topic that you've submitted. If you can put something together, it is helpful, because especially if you are a newer speaker, you don't have a lot of maybe name recognition yet. You don't have an extensive speaker resume. Again, some of these conferences, they will want you to list all of the places you've spoken recently. And if you don't have that, a video is going to be really, really helpful to people, because they just want to know that you can communicate smoothly, and it's good practice, right? So I do a lot of podcasts, so I'll sometimes link to those so that people can hear how I communicate. You know, and for better or worse, it's a bit of a leap of faith, right? You have to be willing to put it out there and be like, well, maybe this will actually harm me. I don't know, but you kind of have to just put yourself out there, and this is who you are, right? And hopefully they will embrace it.
I would say, don't worry about production quality or anything for this video. This video is literally just them so they can see you can speak and communicate. It's like, it's just you.
All right, cool. I had another question that kind of came up. We'll go on to the next. So what's the review selection process for say I submitted my talk? Like, what does that look like? What's the timelines?
I can talk about how we do it like on OpenSSF stuff for the most part. basically the week after the deadline, there's typically a meeting scheduled for the programming committee to meet together and talk through, or the week after the deadline, the programming committee gets a spreadsheet or session eyes of every single talk submitted, and they individually judge those and rate them on a scale. But then there's also a meeting where we all come together and discuss those ratings, and that's when the magic happens and the fun happens. Because sometimes you're like, oh wait, you can. That's when you. It's real fun when you find like someone's rated something like really low and someone's rated really high, and then you're like, what's happening here? What is this talk? And it's invaluable, I think, for a programming committee to have a makeup of people from different backgrounds and different experiences and different things, because none of us know everything. And like you might get someone on a crazy niche topic, but that topic might be incredibly valuable for the show.
From the submitter standpoint, I like to think of it as set it and forget it. Like as long as you have the conference days like alerted on your calendar. So like there have been several times that I've forgotten that I've submitted somewhere and then I got like a notice, like a rejection or an acceptance. And I'm like,
oh,
what? Like, whoops. Okay, that's cool. Yay. Or, oh, okay, well, wish I didn't open that email. I think like once it's in, it's in. And you like normally a conference site will tell you like the waiting period for acceptances to roll out. And, you know, like you just have to just be happy with what you've submitted. And then sometimes you'll get feedback, sometimes you won't, but also you can ask for feedback. You can, you know, I did this I had submitted a couple times to a conference and kept getting rejected. And I just wanted to know what could I do to improve. And basically, when we talk about going broad, I was going way too broad and I wasn't narrowing my topic down to the actual community that I was going to speak in front of. And so the next time I submitted, I got waitlisted. So I went from a rejection to a waitlist, which I was like, hey, that's a plus. And then when I talked to some people in that community, they're like, yeah, your talk was really highly rated, like, you know, good job. And I'm like, awesome. And then the next step, that if you do get waitlisted, you can approach the foundation, the conference committee or whatever and say, can I do this as a webinar? Like after the conference is over? Can I like, so that you get that practice, right? So now you're giving them free content. You were good enough to be waitlisted, right? So that means they really liked what they saw. They just maybe just couldn't fit you into the schedule. As when I was working with the CDF as their outreach chair, like that's what we looked at. We looked at our program. We said, okay, well, who were the highly rated ones that didn't get accepted? Can we use them in a webinar program for the broader, you know, for the rest of the year, right? A conference is only like 1 day to 3 days, depending how long it is. But then as like the LF or OpenSSF, you have many more days in your calendar to fill out. And so it's a great resource to test the speaker out, see if they're really committed, for them to get to practice their material, see what they need to refine. So just because you submit something and you get rejected or waitlisted doesn't mean it's the end, because that same talk that got rejected somewhere else might get picked up somewhere else. Or you can just, again, ask for feedback and try to improve it.
Yeah. And I would also throw out, we have to reject a lot of good content. So that's just, you know, it's just part of the deal. And you have to, it's tough. It's tough to get that rejection notice, but you have to kind of acknowledge that it doesn't mean that your submission wasn't good.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That was very insightful. I wanted to see if anybody on the call had any additional questions before we start closing out. All right, so the final question for the group. One thing, as somebody who has spoken as well in many conferences and podcasts and events, is I like to remind folks to save those links somewhere, whether that's their own personal website, their LinkedIn profile, so that when they do get asked those questions in the applications, like share some links to things that you have done. That's usually my tip and trick for new timers. So just to close out, what is your tip? What are you, just some last minute advice for folks that are interested in making it into cybersecurity? They haven't spoken at a conference. They're really looking for that path of how to how to be the shark in the big ocean that we kind of have right now, like stand out in that talent to really move. Anything you want to share last minute to the group?
I'm gonna steal one of Lori's things from earlier and say start local is what I'm gonna say. Like if you're trying to expand out, as Catherine said as well, but like start local, like see what's nearby you and try and expand out from there. You don't need to go for these giant, huge conferences. However, one more tip on the giant, huge conferences is some of them do have scholarship programs for travel scholarships. So you can submit talks for places where you wouldn't be able to make it to yourself, and you can get accepted, and you can submit for scholarships and get accepted for that. And then all of a sudden you're in Europe. So like there's some pretty interesting things there. Look at scholarship programs for if you're just starting out and looking into going to places. Look at what conference scholarship programs exist and what travel funds exist.
Is there any scholar programs and upcoming CFPs you'd like
We
to
have
plug
a
in?
scholarship program for Fusion, which is currently open, I think, but I don't remember the exact deadline for that. So I'll put that in chat.
Where's Fusion at?
It is in Atlanta, actually, this fall. Atlanta for OpenSSF.
So that's an option. Is the Japan one still open?
Japan CFP closes in 2 days.
So
but it is still open, and you don't know if you apply for Japan. I
anybody wants
list yet.
A little quick plug in there.
You know, just a couple days. Thank you.
Lori or Catherine?
I wanted to reiterate that you don't have to be the utmost expert to speak. Just don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I want to acknowledge that it is tough. It's tough to get over that initial fear, especially if it's your first time doing it. But there are people on review committees, and I'm one of them, and I look for newer speakers because I'm very curious about it. So that goes back to, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, but the more supplemental information you can give reviewers, the better, right? In terms of videos, or do you write blogs? Do you do podcasts? Any of that kind of stuff is really helpful. But don't be afraid to do it. Just share what you know.
And I'm going to go back to what Catherine said and kind of expand on it a little bit, is that idea of the buddy system. So before I gave like my first talk, and it was for CDCon, or CD mini summit, people at the CDF were like, wait, you've never given a talk before? And it's because I was so vocal in the community, right? So I think when you are thinking about writing a talk, things like that, find a buddy, but also get in the community that you want to speak in front of. So if you're not on the OpenSSF Slack, like if you're not currently like, you don't have to be working on a project, but just, trying to talk about things with other people, you're kind of missing out, because that helps when people get to know who you are. To Catherine's point, if you don't have the experience, but they're like, just like me, people just assumed and they had no idea how absolutely frightened I was. That helps. And then additionally with the buddy system, I'm not a technical person, so I paired up with a solution engineer. And then I paired up with a couple other DevRel folks. So the solution engineer shared some of his facts, his knowledge, some of his slides with me to help me build my presentation, to help give me that confidence, because I trusted him. So like I knew what he was giving me was solid. And then presenting to people that I was comfortable with, knowing that if I mess up, I'm in a quote safe space, right? They're not going to think less of me. And what you'll realize is you have so many people behind you, supporting you, pushing you forward. So if you are nervous because you've never given a talk, if you are like just afraid to even submit a first abstract, if you think it's like a little too daunting to come to office hours and submit to the DevRel committee, hit us up on Slack. Like you don't have to. Don't let fear, I think to Catherine's point, get in your way. Embrace it, right? Embrace the nerves, because you're going to realize there are so many people behind you that want to see you succeed and want to help push you onto that stage, and sit there in the audience like, like a proud mama, and just like clap when you're done. So like, again, the community helped save me when I was looking for a job. They kept me engaged. They gave me stuff to do, had me continue to submit talks. And don't neglect the fact that we've all kind of been in that position before, and none of us are coming at this as oh, we're so superior to you. It's like, no, like we've been there. That's the value of open source, right? Like that's one of the things I love about the open source community, is that it is a community and we've all had to start somewhere. So don't be afraid to use us as your allies and your support system.
Love it. You're gonna make me tear up on camera. Thank you so much, Catherine, Lori, and Sahil for your time today, your knowledge and sharing. We do have these community office hours every month. The next one's set for September 26th. You can get the details on the LF event public calendar page. And that one is going to be focused on finding mentors, communities in open source and cybersecurity. So if you are looking for your tribe in open source to help you grow and learn as a professional, feel free to look at that. You can also message us on the general channel. There is a channel called CFP-announce that some folks share call for papers there that you can look at. Mailing list, and then there's also the DEI working group that you're welcome. And I don't know if any other channels folks want to share that folks can message at.
I think that's a good list.
Good list.
All
Yeah.
these.
And then the question is just the DEI mentorship group. This is the DEI community office hours in which we have specific topics every month. You're welcome to submit a topic that you like to learn for I think we have it scheduled out to October, but we're always open to shifting next month if there's something more specific you're interested in. And with that, Prince, if you have any more questions, feel free to once again message us on Slack. Thank you everyone for today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, y'all.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.